Our guest today is James Shea, founder of the Institute for Transpersonal Empowerment. James Shea has a BA and Master's in Psychology, has been operating the Institute for 10 years in Vancouver. Welcome to the program, James.
Hi, Cam.
So tell us about the Institute for Transpersonal Empowerment. What's its definition?
Well, the Institute 10 years ago began as a result of seeing that a lot of people were stuck in places that they couldn't get out of, living lives of quiet desperation, feeling helpless and powerless to change. As a matter of fact, there was a survey done recently that quoted something like 90% of all people interviewed in that survey were wanting to change their life, wanting to change it dramatically, but didn't know how. And so it's as a response to that kind of a need that we decided to begin to develop programs that were centered around empowerment.
And with this Institute, do you focus strictly on relationships?
No, we have a broad context. Relationships, though, are at the center of all that we do. We're always in relationships. So that's one of the central types of programs that we do. But we work in dealing with change, with stress, in a lot of areas. We go into the corporate sector and are doing work in business.
Okay. Something that I'd like to ask you about is relationships. And what about relationships? We get ourselves involved in a relationship. We meet somebody for the first time and we fall madly in love with this person, only to find 3 months later that we actually have nothing in common with them, and we don't know what to do about it. What is that progression that takes place for people?
50 ways to leave your lover, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there are defined stages to relationship. The first stage, the honeymoon stage, the kind of dream stage, is common to every relationship and really to every creative process. That's where we get into really only seeing what our projection is on the other person. We don't really see who is there. We see who we want to be there. And so we have an idealized image that we hold of them. When we're starting a new project, it's the same thing. It's idealized. So what happens is when that wears down and we begin to see what's really there, that's when the proverbial poop hits the fan.
Right. And now you mentioned projections onto relationships. How does one move away from, maybe move away is not even the right word, how does one own the projection? In other words, not give the power to the projection, but give the power to themselves. How can one move into that in the first part of the relationship?
Well, that's challenging because the reason they're projections is because at some level we have moved them out of our conscious mind and moved them down into our subconscious or unconscious mind. And we did that for a reason. We did that because for some reason or other we didn't want those qualities. So maybe what we're seeing in our partner is that they never listen, or we're seeing that they're always blaming or they're always criticizing. But in actual fact, that's a place in us that we have found so unacceptable that we've moved it out of our consciousness. The only way the universe can bring us back into wholeness is to have us see that mirrored outside ourselves. So that process of reclaiming that is a painful one for most people because they have to begin to own that which they have greatly feared or that which they have greatly judged.
And what's the process to own that?
The process is to begin to be willing, to see that your partner is really at that early stage carrying the qualities that you put onto them. And if you want that relationship and are committed to that relationship, you need to begin to pull those back. You need to begin to claim that projection as yours. What that does then is that takes you into a place within yourself where it begins to activate the emotions, the feelings that were centered around why you discarded it, why you moved it out of your consciousness in the first place. So it's that dynamic of being willing to feel the feelings, to being willing to claim what's going on and not blame, that is the essence of all empowerment. Empowerment is about being willing to claim that you are the center. You are the causal center for what's happening in your life. You're the creative force.
So having said that, I'm in a relationship, and I see that there's something in this relationship that I don't like. So what you're saying is that it could be that I'm projecting my own patterns and everything onto this relationship.
Not just that it could be, that it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I need to understand this. how do I actually own it? What is the process from recognizing it to
Well, the first question would be, what would be wrong
Yeah.
with that person being exactly that way if that were the case? So let's say, give me an example of something that might be there, say, in your partner.
Okay. I don't like the way my partner is addressing her financial bills.
Okay, so she's
Something
scattered
something common in a relationship, I think, too, is people are scattered when it comes to their bills. They've always got money problems, and one partner is very good at it, the other partner is blasé about it, airy-fairy, and
So the problem here is there's some kind of irresponsibility being shown. You're
Right.
not dealing with it. So the real question, if that's a problem for you in your partner, is why is that a problem for you? What's it bring up for you?
okay, all right, and recognizing that,
So when you get in, what you're going to experience is, well, if a person doesn't look after their bills properly and isn't responsible, then something's going to happen. If that something happened, basically it's going to get down to is that you feel bad. You don't feel good anymore. So you want your partner to change so you can feel good.
and when that happens, a lot of people actually just want to leave their partner, but that pattern will repeat itself
Yeah.
unless it's addressed.
So the first stage of relationship is romantic and is full of allure and seduction because in one sense your partner is mirroring what you hold inside yourself as the dream partner. It's really an aspect of yourself which you're out of touch with and disempowering yourself in relation to. You can have positive projections as well, things that you really like about people.
Putting expectations into a relationship because out of your own loneliness. Say.
Exactly. And suddenly the projection begins to wear down. You start to see things through the projections that you weren't seeing before. Now that person is exactly the same as they were a month ago or 2 months ago or 3 months
That's
ago.
the interesting part about
You
it.
just missed because you were
Yeah.
overlaying your own stuff.
Yeah, I totally.
Then
can
you
relate to
decide
that.
you don't like that person as much as you like the other one, and why won't they come back? And really, it's got nothing to do with them. And if people at that point can stop and say, well, I wonder what I was hiding from there. I wonder what it was that I didn't want to feel and that I'm judging and blaming her for. Then it's at that point that you begin that process of owning your projection because you're taking it back then. Well, maybe it isn't her. Maybe it has something to do with me. See, really, this whole business of projections is good in the sense that you've buried so much stuff. If you don't get it brought up and healed and owned, it leaves you fragmented. So everybody in your life that's mirroring stuff that you're not particularly happy with is doing you a real service. They're a gift, not a problem. But
Right.
hey, tell that to you know who.
To the social consciousness
Yeah.
out there right now says it's bad. Now,
Right.
forgiveness.
Well, that's the second stage. If you're going to begin to heal in a relationship, it means that at some point you have to get past those places. If you've made that first step of reclaiming that projection, in essence, it's primarily an intellectual step of seeing, no, it isn't her or him, it's me. And then that begins to deepen down. What you start to encounter are places of pain, emotional heartbreak that you've been through before. Maybe it was your dad who said, I can't stand it. You're never responsible. You're never looking after things. And maybe that created a breach in your relationship with your father that upset you. And so you wanted to hide away from those feelings. Well, guess what's going to start to surface? And as that begins to surface, you start to target your anger at your father or at your mother.
Right.
That begins then, if you're going to heal that, a process of forgiveness because you're getting down to the core issues.
But are you not blaming them though? Are you not going into a blame?
Yeah, if you
blame
do that,
consciousness?
if you believe it was them, but there was a place even then where you were still in that situation of projection, where that needs to be reclaimed. See, all of us at some level came to do one thing on this planet. We came to love. We came to be beings of light and to enjoy and to be happy. There's a place where we've closed down our hearts, and where we close down our hearts are places where we can't accept, we can't love, we can't share anymore. And so we don't want to recognize that truth within ourselves. We close that down and hide from that and blame it on other people.
I just want to go back to projections for a minute. I have a question regarding what is the difference between projections and expectations?
For all intents and purposes, there really isn't.
Okay.
Every expectation comes out of a place of need, where
Right.
you need people to be a particular way, and so you project that onto them.
So you're projecting your own expectations.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, forgiveness of yourself. Back to that again.
Forgiveness is, in its truest sense, is about giving your love back
Back to
to
yourself.
life again. You have to receive it first. You have to experience it for yourself first, and then share it with other people. The degree to which you're blaming, you're closing down and withdrawing your love. If you were doing that in the early stages with your
Right.
parents because they were treating you in a poor way, then
So it's all about looking back at your inner child
true. Yep.
on the forgiveness stage.
Yeah. Because there's a wounded child in each of us, and that child never felt validated, never felt appreciated, never felt valued, and really is still carrying a grudge.
So how do you find the inner child in yourself? How does one go about finding the inner child? The ego gets involved perhaps and says, no, there's no child left. You're a man, you're an adult, or you're a full-grown woman. There's no child left anymore. I mean, we can have fun and play as adults.
Who's a full-grown woman?
And exactly, we can go play pool and laugh and have some fun.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually doing some personal work on yourself, how do we embrace that inner child?
The child is always there at the emotional level. One way that you know you're connecting to your child is you start to feel vulnerable again. You start to feel your feelings again. You start to feel a sense of trepidation. But at the same time, that's on the downside. On the positive side, you feel a sense of creativity and discovery, a sense of inspiration, a sense of innocence. It just opens up a whole new avenue for you. So as you deepen down from that place where you're intellectualizing the whole process, trying to understand it, trying to be aware of it, hoping that that will be the solution, as you deepen down into the emotions, you start to connect with the child. The child is there at an emotional level. Any of the intellectual rationale isn't going to touch the child.
Right, and if you're touching your inner child, one would probably feel, my own experience, one would feel a certain peacefulness.
Once you get through the woundedness of the inner child, see, every child carries a place of woundedness where they close their heart down. They forgot that it wasn't about them being lovable. They forgot that they could love.
That's a big one for people.
Really is.
Embracing the inner child. I feel that a lot of people out there are not prepared to even look into the direction of the inner child because they're still in a consciousness of blame.
And a consciousness of control. See, one of the things about connecting with the child is we begin to slowly let go of control. And there's an enormous fear of letting go of control in our world. We feel that we have to be armored, protected, and defended against anything.
Well, it's reflected out there.
Yeah.
The control. I mean, just in our governments, in our society, and the whole world, how we've placed so much emphasis on trying to control other countries, just so that we can have our way and the way we want to run things. What can you tell us about being out of control? What is being out of control? I mean, we've seen people going completely out of control and going mad.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that as much as I'm talking about people who have begun to access the energy of their heart. And as the energy of the heart begins to flow, people begin to feel that energy radiating out. It cannot be received or shared if the person is setting up control as the primary operative imperative within their structure. So whether you're an individual, you're an organization, you're a partner in a relationship, if control is the key element, a lot of love isn't going to be able to flow in that relationship. Forgiveness begins that process. Appreciation begins that process. Valuing of the other partner begins to open that up because it creates a sense of safety.
In your experience, James, in relationships, what is by far the most well-known relationship problem?
Well, certainly the whole issue of projections, but I'd say the power struggle dynamic is the one that toasts most relationships.
Power struggle.
Power struggle follows when the projections begin to decay and fall, and two people are standing there looking at each other as
Okay.
more as they are than as what begins to happen is, okay, something's going wrong here. I want you to look after this thing for me. I want you to be what I need you to be. I want you to go back into being the way you were before. And people can't do that. They can only be who they are. So a struggle ensues over who's going to be the dominant partner, i.e. who's going to be in control.
Right.
Who's going to feel the feelings, and who's going to be the one who isn't, who's cool, who's like, a John Wayne type.
Right, right.
So who's going to be the dependent one, who's going to be the independent one? And all of this tries to sort itself out in the second stage of relationship.
Okay, now we have
Most relationships die there because people would rather quit than commit at that point.
and communication, I find, is another big one for couples having problems. What is there about communication? What is it strictly just fear of, what's the fear of not communicating with your partner?
Well, I think the question has more to do with the depth of the communication. You can talk, and people have really little difficulty in a relationship talking about things or talking about things at an intellectual level. But it's when two people are beginning to move towards each other at a deeper level of intimacy, when they begin to talk about how they're feeling about things, that tensions begin to build. Communication takes place at a number of different levels, but the most powerful communication, peak communication, takes place when people actually forget about themselves.
Yeah.
They lose a sense of self-consciousness, and they're really connecting with each other. They're really in tune with each other's hearts. They're really in tune with the energy of the other person, and they can almost hear and feel what the other person is saying before they even say it.
I can remember a time in my own life, I'll use myself as an example. I mean, this is just hilarious. When I look back on it now, how funny it really was. I met this woman. We sat across the table from each other, and it was in a Beano's restaurant. We were introduced together, and we sat across, and I told her all my likes. No, this is what I like, and I like this. And I was in a place of being, I was in a place of being desperate for a relationship. I wanted someone in my life. I wanted to share my life because all my friends had relationships. And I was the quote, the single guy. And so I never recognized this, but I had listed all my things that I liked in a relationship. And she sat across the table, and we were sharing this, and she says, oh, I like that too, and I like that too. And all of a sudden, and maybe you can shed some light, because I'm sure there's other relationships out there that are similar to this, that you share things, and all of a sudden you think you've got everything in common, and then you move in together. And then reality sits in. And somebody leaves the toothpaste cap open, and the toothpaste is falling out, and you get angry at that. Now, it's really not the toothpaste you're getting angry at.
No, it's the disconnection in the relationship. I call there's 5 stages of relationship. I call the first 3 stages of unrelationship, because you're not really in relationship with another person, in that you're in relationship to your projections, you're in relationship in the sense of a power struggle, but you're not really connecting with that person. In those dynamics, what you're doing, it's a hidden. People could not on the surface appear to be fighting, but there's a guerrilla war going on, a hidden sniper kind of thing taking place, and yet that dynamic isn't being addressed. And so people then go into the 3rd stage, which is kind of a dead zone. It's where there's no life left in the relationship. The people are together, and that's great, but there's no life left in the relationship. The sexual attraction is gone. That's when another aspect of the relationship begins to enter, and people start looking outside the relationship.
Okay, sexual relationships. There's nothing in. I like this. I like sexual relationships sometimes. I didn't say this.
Sometimes.
We can cut this out later. Yeah. So, sexual relationships. You can have a sexual relationship with somebody and have absolutely nothing in common, but yet you will continue having sex with this person. What's that about?
Well, that's as close as you can get in terms of intimacy. Intimacy can take place physically, can take place emotionally, can take place spiritually. The deeper level of intimacy you get, the closer and more bonded you connect with that person. So if you're afraid to open up emotionally, maybe the closest you're going to get to physical relationship.
So they use sex as a way to express their...
Yeah, that's as good as it gets.
Okay.
For some people.
I mean, I went as far as getting married for 3 months and waking up one morning and saying, what am I doing here? And I packed my bags and left. So it was quite an interesting relationship. But we went through that stage of the honeymoon, the dead zone. We went through all of that. And then I realized that I'm not happy here, and it's up to me to create my own happiness.
See, real relationship and what we're moving into, I define 2 types of relationship, real relationship and these stages of unrelationship. There's a real type of marriage, what I call a transformed marriage, and a marriage which is your average everyday marriage. What is missing in one and there in the other is a really deep quality of commitment. When 2 people have made a conscious commitment to each other, then leaving is no longer an option. Guess what then happens? Those 2 people they're either stuck with each other in hell for eternity, or else they're going to get to work and start to move some of this stuff through. So when you go in the morning and you find that toothpaste cap off, if you're with that person for the rest of your life, there's no value, no merit, no percentage in you blaming her anymore for that. So you start to take a look at, well, I wonder what I have running here. I wonder what my issue is around this. And invariably, you find that there's a place at a deeper level. And it might not have anything to do with toothpaste caps, but an emotional level of that inner child that you talked about.
Okay.
Maybe.
Two people meet. They think they're in love. One person decides that they're not in love anymore, and then they never were. There's a family involved now. As the founder of this institute, what would you recommend for a situation like that? Just as an example, if you were going to work with somebody like that, the other person is still in love, the other person isn't in love, and there's no...
See, a relationship is different. You can have a relationship. You don't have to live together. You don't have to be together. Every relationship is different. Everyone is individual. A lot of people need to set boundaries, and they need to be really clear about what they want in a relationship. Sounds like that would have been a good place for you to have started with that marriage situation. Because often you get yourself into situations and you're not sure what you're about.
Right.
One of the questions I often ask people is, make a list of the 10 most important people in your life. And what often happens is people come back with a list, and they got all kinds of people on there, but they're never on that list. And the empowerment begins by putting yourself on the list of the top 10 most important people in your life. The closer you are to the top, the closer you are to being actually in some level of integrity and truth with yourself. If what you're doing in your life isn't true for someone else, it isn't true for you. And if it isn't true for you, it isn't going to be true for someone else.
And that's where surrendering to your truth comes in.
Yeah.
And how do you surrender to your truth?
Well, your truth is always about your heart. There's an intellectual component to it. And the deepest experience of truth, though, comes as you're willing to open your heart. As I say, most people are still in a place where their connection to their heart and their connection to loving is blocked. Now, this is serious business, because research is beginning to reveal that cardiac arrest, the whole issue of the heart, is becoming a very powerful dynamic. The research is showing that anger, stress, negative emotions are having a real serious impact on the heart. I mean, people have known that for years, but research is now documenting that. It's also showing that the more open, the more loving, the more appreciative and caring and valuing a person is, naturally, the more healthy their heart is going to be. The energy of the heart, both electrically and in terms of the whole kind of emotional connection that's associated with, is very powerful. More powerful, in fact, than the energy of the head, the energy of the brain. But really, both of these need to be working together in a cooperative way, in a partnership. Typically, each of us carries a masculine principle and a feminine principle. Right. The feminine is associated with the heart and the masculine with the head.
Of course.
The masculine has always wanted to control and dominate through the head. The feminine has always talked about the heart. Relationship issues usually have to do with those two dynamics.
Right.
and a marriage of bringing those two energies together. So in an individual, the empowerment process is about them opening their heart, letting that energy flow, and connecting then with what their meaning and purpose is as it flows to the heart.
Right. Now, there is an exercise that I really enjoyed. I saw you last year in Vernon at a conference, and this year again in Vernon at a conference. Now, I noticed this year you didn't do it, but I've never forgotten this exercise, and it's the 1-2 game.
Yeah, well, it's a process of speaking to your subconscious mind rather than your conscious mind. Your conscious mind will always give you the story, but don't forget all those projections, all that hidden stuff that you buried is in your subconscious mind, and you can circumvent that.
Can you give us an example of that? I mean, I think it's such a great game.
Well, I could,
and
but
it really works.
But it isn't a game.
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to do that, but I think it's more the kind of dynamic that would happen naturally in a process that we would be doing together.
Right.
But basically, what happened? I can tell you what happened.
Tell us how it works. Yeah.
A lot of people were there with a specific focus, and in the conscious mind, they wanted very much to achieve that purpose consciously. But basically, what was happening subconsciously, when I asked them to raise their hands and indicate how many people were there for that specific focus and were committed to it, I think pretty nearly everybody raised their hand.
I think so too, yeah.
When I asked, okay, let's talk to the unconscious mind, and I had them choose a 1 or a 2, 1 equaling no, 2 equaling yes, how many people are really going to do that here, really? I think there was less than 2% of the people there who really, at a subconscious level, were committed to the same thing they talked about at a conscious level.
Why use numbers?
Could use letters. Numbers.
But why not just answer with yes or no? Is that?
Well, then you're speaking to the conscious mind. Well, so what we did is code a yes or no.
Okay.
That's all we did.
So the unconscious mind knows the real answer before the conscious mind.
Darn right it does, yeah. And that's where a lot of the unconscious, subconscious conspiracy against our greatness, our fullness, our wholeness resides, is in that subconscious mind. I used to be a smoker. I guess my attitude was that of a smoker. So I smoked 3 packages of cigarettes a day.
Wow.
I tried for a long time to quit. I could not quit from that attitude of being a quitter. Once I adopted the attitude that I was a non-smoker and lived with that and integrated that, it worked, because subconsciously I'm not a quitter. 10% of your mind is conscious. The rest is like the iceberg. It's beneath the surface. And we need to begin to work with those dynamics at that level if we want success. You want success, but you may be up against fears inside of you that would hold you back. And they would create little conspiracies, little sabotages, little ways of tripping you on your way to success.
Self-sabotage.
Yeah.
A self-sabotage pattern.
That is at the heart of a lot of relationship problems. A lot of people want a good relationship, but as long as they're in control.
Okay, we're talking about relationships again, and do you just work with people that are in a partnership relationship, or say I have a friend that we're having a difficult time with? Would you work with just two friends that are just going through some? Sure.
One person. The ultimate relationship, the central relationship, the reason I ask people to make that list of 10 people and ask themselves if they're on it is because the number one person you're in relationship, really the only person you're ever in relationship with, is yourself. And you're projecting those things out there into the world.
Right.
It's good for you to know what you're projecting. So whether it's you working with yourself, which is the most powerful dynamic, or you working with a partner or a friend, that can all be accommodated within the context of the work that we do. We're working with teams in business to make those teams more successful, team leaders to understand the dynamics that are going on in the team and how the team could fear being more successful, achieving higher levels of productivity.
How do you apply your Institute for Transpersonal Empowerment in a business? What exactly is the steps? Do you work with people that are having relationship problems with their boss, or with the
conflict within the organization?
Yeah.
Basically what we do is we'll go into an organization and sit down with the CEO or whoever and talk to them about what their perception of the problem is and what kinds of things they see happening. The next step would be for us to meet with the people who are experiencing the difficulties, the middle management. Might be a leadership problem. Then we would look at bringing out the aspect of leadership, leading from the heart, could be a management problem. We deal with management from managing from the heart. See, when you have appreciation in an organization, the level of stress drops, the level of conflict drops. People begin to relate to each other on a field of appreciation rather than a field of fear. And it's incredible what begins to happen. Health improves, absenteeism drops, conflict in the organization drops, stress drops. So it's very powerful, and it's just beginning to be discovered or documented in a research sense, just the power of this.
I've gone into some companies and some of the offices and some buildings that have a lot of employees, and the feeling that I get when I walk in there is everybody is so friendly. And in fact, I went to Revy, a hardware store last night, just to buy a staple gun, and I was looking around for the right size staples. This fella comes along and he says, "Can I help you?" And I told him what I was looking for. I was also looking for a pair of scissors. He says, "Oh," he says, "come with me." I mean, they were so courteous all the way through, and this is not a commercial for Revy,
Revy's Ed.
for Revy or hardware, but the feeling that I was getting was a welcome feeling.
Yep.
And
Sorry.
And when I've been to other places, as a matter of fact, I went into a unsaid bookstore. I won't say the name of this particular store, and the reception I got was very cold and very, well, I'm busy right now. Haven't you got anything else to do? And I just took a step back and went, hold it. I didn't, all I'm doing is asking a question as a customer. So how can companies alleviate that problem? Because it's not focused to one little bookstore. It's focused to walking into a McDonald's, to going into the corporate head office of Tidy Bowl.
Whether it comes over the phone or whether it comes in person, that moment where the employee meets the client or the customer is the moment of truth. And that whole organization, in the perception of that organization in that client's eyes, that customer's eyes, can be destroyed in that moment. So one of the things that we've come to recognize is you can't be there for others if you're not there for yourself. And so it begins with empowerment. And people think of empowerment in a functional sense, like having decision-making power on the front line, and that's critical to it. But also, they need to be able to feel empowered within themselves, to know who they are, and to feel like one of their goals is that they want to be there for that customer. Not that they have to be or they've been trained to be, but that they want to be there for that client. And when that happens, it becomes a joy. Service becomes a joy at that moment. And service is critical. 2/3, 3/4 of all business now is focused around some form of service. So unless we get good at being in that relationship to other people that we call service, then it isn't going to, we're not going to be successful. The competition between companies for product and value are so close now. Service is what makes the difference.
Well, I find that most companies, it's the people on the front lines, and management is sitting back watching, and it's if you walk into an office and there's a secretary sitting there, she's got her papers, her desk full of stuff, she's consistently busy, but yet she can remain friendly. People like that I really admire, because they're not carrying they're not taking their personal problems to work, and they're using their focus on work alone. Now, would there be dynamics going on in that office to create such a space? Like
either that, or you have found a rare gem.
Right.
In most cases, it isn't that natural. Most people, whether you like it or not, it's a whole picture, and they bring their family and they bring their problems to the office. The real question I think an employer has to face if he's looking at going into the 21st century is, what can I do to work with this fact? What can I do to work with the dynamics and create a sense of wellness in that organization? Because wellness is central. And wellness isn't just about physical, how you feel physically, or whether you have a fitness program in that business. Wellness has to do with the physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual well-being of the individual. So it's much deeper than you'd think. It's about meaning and purpose. It's about feeling appreciated and valued. It's about feeling cared for. When somebody who's at the front lines knows that they are empowered to make a choice to make the customer or the client as important or more important than some other work that they have to do, that's where they'll be. But when the message that they're getting is it's better to be more productive, this work has to be done before the end of the day, and if it isn't done, you're going to get a poor performance review. Guess where they're going to put their energy? It's going to be in that situation.
In the situation that makes them comfortable.
And they need to be free of their personal issues. So Empowerment is about, if we work in the same workplace, me being able to come in and sit down and say, Cam, you know, I had a heck of a night. I was up till 5 last night. The baby kept waking up, and my wife is sick, and I just, when I can release that and feel heard and then go back to work, I'm not carrying that onto the job site itself. I've released it. So that's part of a team. A part of a team is being able to coach as well as counsel, to counsel as well as coach in the emerging.
Okay, then on that note, just that example, I've been up till 5 in the morning, baby was up all night long. This person tells it to the other person and says, well, so was I, and I was here on time. How do you get around all that?
Well, that's a good point. What needs to be created is a climate. Maybe you spoke to the wrong person. The idea is that there be someone, maybe it's your team leader should be speaking to, or maybe there's a coach, a designated coach within the team. But there has to be a place where you can release those issues and feel supported in that process and feel empowered as a human being. Because as human beings, we have all that in our life. We can't just shut that stuff down. I mean, we try to, but the more we fragment our life, the more we fragment our experience of our wholeness. Yeah.
The resistance is futile, is the saying, or resistance. The more resistance, the more persistent. Or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, so in a corporate office, then there has to be a leader.
Yep.
That's what you're saying. There has to be somebody that people can go to. Now, this person has problems too. I mean, everybody has. We're all human. We all have problems. We all, at some point, carry our stuff with us to work.
It's how effectively we deal with those. Ideally, down the road, it isn't about sharing those with other people as much as it's feeling empowered to deal with them in the moment yourself.
Right.
And one of the techniques that we've developed is what we call the empowerment option. It's a very powerful, proactive tool for people in business who are going through a lot of stress, a lot of change, to begin to connect with something deeper that can allow them to settle that stuff down without feeling the need to burden other people or to go too far afield with being caught in that themselves.
And how long now, is this a course, the empowerment option? Is this a class?
It really is a technique and a process in its simplest sense. It only takes about 5 minutes to do, to really learn. But it's something that you can do all day long when you encounter situations. We present it in situations so people learn how to use it proactively in their life, so that they can train themselves to develop it, so that they can create this oasis within the midst of the storm where they're always sourcing something higher within themselves, so they're not feeling burnt out or stressed out.
Can you share the technique?
Well, it's a process through our workshops, as I say, that we share. But basically, there's 5 steps to it. The first step is you need to be able to stop time. You need to be able to stop space. You need to be able to clear a place for yourself where the stress, the problem, the issues that you're facing are stopped. And we use a technique of holding our hands over our heart in this way, because until you can connect with your heart, you can't really feel the warmth of your own life energies flowing through you. And as we do that and close our eyes and go within, we begin to create a space within ourselves that isn't encumbered by all the fear, all the rapid-paced change, all of the concerns about whether we're going to make it or whether we're going to get the money or whether this is going to be resolved or not.
Will I get my raise?
Exactly. So the third stage is when you create that place of quiet, when you create that place of no space, no time within yourself, what begins to happen is you begin to get the intuitive connection that can allow you to begin to solve a lot of those problems. So working with this technique, people have had very powerful changes, perceptions. What it does more than anything is it allows us to shift our perception so we can begin to reframe things in a way that's positive.
Interesting.
Very powerful tool, very powerful in terms of the physiological changes it brings about. Angry, stressed, fearful situations need to be stopped and replaced with loving, appreciating, caring, valuing kinds of situations.
Some people are afraid to move in, to go into that place. Is it Why is that? Why is
Well,
it
that's
that
why we
people
have
are
the
so afraid
workshop.
to move in?
That's why we have the workshop, is to begin to deal with all of the things that people would bring up to block that, that place. It's a very powerful place.
Yeah.
Everybody, in essence, in our model of transpersonal empowerment is complete as they are. There's no need for people to get more of anything or to feel like they should get rid of something in themselves. All that's necessary is that they be willing to connect with that place of completion. What happens is that people are afraid to trust going back to that place because it brings up an element of vulnerability.
I know for me, my experience, and I've actually not experienced your workshop as of yet, but I've experienced your different techniques that you've used. One of my things is I was in a fearful place of losing the people I have in my life. I was so afraid that if I changed, the people around me wouldn't all of a sudden be there anymore because I have nothing in common with them anymore, and it's such a safe place for me to be with the people that I'm with. And I've changed that since then.
See, that's one very powerful reason why people would not want to do that.
Go within because there's a fear of change, a fear of having.
If they change anything, that they're going to lose something. But really, what we're doing is preventing a lot of serious heart disease. What we're talking about doing is releasing people from stressful situations. What we're talking about is increasing a level of mental clarity so that they can make good choices and be productive.
So what you're really saying is that parts of our body are connected to our emotional and
absolutely
and feeling bodies.
Our heart is very much so. That organ. I mean, we've known that for thousands of years. Philosophers have talked about that place.
I mean, it's knowing. It's somebody comes up and says, "I had a heart attack." Well, unfortunately, I'm sorry that you had a heart attack. Is it our place to say you've got a heart issue, so you need to look at that?
No.
You see, so this is what
it doesn't so much work that way. But if you are centered in your heart, what you can connect within that person is what they need most from you right then, and that might be just to touch them
or
just say, "Hey, I'm here for you. I see what you're going through."
Compassion.
Yeah. They don't need to hear that they got other kind of problem.
Yeah, exactly. How did you create that?
Yeah.
Having compassion for somebody. Unless we have compassion for ourselves, how can we have compassion for someone else? How can we touch them and say, "I have compassion for you. I'm sorry that you're in that place." Do we not go into a place of feeling sorry for them? If we're not...
Compassion comes from the heart. Feeling sorry comes out of an emotional place that is a place of holding them in judgment.
Right.
So it isn't true.
So you're judging somebody if you're feeling sorry for them.
Yeah.
As you hear a lot of people say, "I feel so sorry for that person." So they're judging the situation.
What they're really saying is that they would hate to be in that situation themselves, and what they're feeling is how they would feel if they were in that situation.
Right, right. Now you've got some stuff coming up, January, February, and March, and I'd like to talk about that.
Sure.
The Wellness Empowerment Seminar Series you've developed. One of them is Heart of Wellness. Another one is the Heart of Empowerment, and 3 is the Heart of Ultimate Well-Being.
Right.
Now, can you tell us a little bit? Can you tell us about each one of them?
Okay. Well, basically, the 3 of them combined are an introduction to the very things that we're talking about.
Okay.
Wellness is a larger concept than just being physically fit.
Right.
And what is it exactly? And it integrates a multidimensional kind of thing. We're talking about the physical, we're talking about the emotional, we're talking about the intellectual and spiritual. Wellness is a total wholeness package, and how you balance and harmonize those energies. So that's really, but also there's a lot of research to suggest that there are factors influencing wellness that people need to know more about, like the energy of the heart, or how the emotions are impacting to limit our experience of wellness. Increasing our likelihood of aging through stress. So.
Taking your course, can it help somebody stop drinking, stop smoking?
The empowerment option can help any situation where a person is running away from and hiding in denial, is wanting to avoid, because within us is a center, a place of peace. Within us is a center of love and caring and appreciation. When we can hit that place, we can change any area of our life. In actual fact, it's the only place that we can bring permanent change from, is that place of truth.
Interesting. In the corporate world again, for relationships, and how is it that you can come into a corporate office and get people to work together through all of what we've talked about? There's still a part of me that is going into denial. Say I'm in this office and I'm still denying that there's a problem in my office to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
At what point would I be able to recognize?
When the bottom line changes, when you start to see your employees working together more productively, when you start to see production increase, when you start to see less absenteeism. I mean, you don't know that unless you actually take the step and give it a try. But to the degree that individuals have brought this program into their organization or corporation, there have been successful results as a result of it, as a consequence.
Right. We have a few minutes left, James, and I'd like for you to tell us what your perception on how the past 10 years have been for you as a person, and how you have seen the change in humanity and society from 10 years ago.
Well, basically, things have accelerated incredibly over that 10 years. The amount of information, the way we deal with things. I mean, the whole theme with computers was brought in to deal with stress. The idea was that we would be more productive and less stressful, but in actual fact, the statistics show that there's been like a very modest increase in productivity, something like 2%, whereas there's been an enormous increase in the amount of stress, 44%, or higher, I believe now. So what's happening is more technology isn't helping the problem that every workplace is faced with. What's needed at the basis of it is more heart. There needs to be more heart in the workplace, more managing from the heart, more leading from the heart, and more livelihood that comes out of the heart. And we're seeing that that's literally true, and true in the metaphoric sense as well.
Do you think computers have a big thing for stress?
How do you mean?
Well, I sit down at a computer, and 2 hours later, the hair on my arms is standing up.
Yeah, well, there's no question that there's an electrical thing going on there, a radiation.
Is there any way on an emotional or mental way that we can actually protect ourselves from getting computer buzzed?
Well,
through our own empowerment.
Monitoring the time that you spend with your computer. See, what happens is people become less functional in relation to other people the more time that they spend on the computer. The computer has to do with logic and control. And if you're really on top of logic and control, which is what technology is all about, then you can create the experience.
Spend most of the time on the chat lines.
Yeah. Well, okay.
There's people that do that. Spend 18 hours.
They're living their life in virtual reality. So, but life exists in and around us all of the time, and the more time that you are willing to spend in your heart, the stronger your immune system is going to be, the stronger your energy field is going to be, and the greater capacity you have to resist those stresses. You're not going to be able to change the stressors that are out there, but you can change how you experience them and how you perceive them through being willing to connect more deeply with your heart, open it, and share it. That's our message from the Institute.
Interesting. And you're on the internet?
Yeah.
And do you want to, if you got an address?
Yep.
www.
wellness-empowerment.com.
And you have seminars coming up, the dates for them?
January the 31st, I believe. 31st. Call the Institute. I believe the number will flash up somewhere along the way here. And but the end of January, I believe it's the 30th, 31st. 3 weeks later in February, and 3 weeks later again in March.
Okay, and that's going to be here in Vancouver?
Here in Vancouver.
And the cost of it is $35 per person. Or if you would like to attend all three, it's $85.
Right.
James, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Cam.
This has been an absolute a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Cam Steele. You've just been experiencing our program on Awakenings and New Age Northwest. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good day. We'll see you next week.
Good job.
Yeah.